Hello guys, welcome to another session. So this is the answer writing program. So we will look at a question and we'll try to answer that. Remember, this is a revision session, not the actual class. So we will try to cover it faster. So the question is, in a post-COVID world, inequalities have risen sharply. How can we apply Marx ideas to reduce this crisis of inequality? So the question is related to, of course, inequality and everything we can write, but here it's related to Marx's idea to reduce the crisis, right? Okay. So again, very straightforward. We have discussed all the theories and everything. So you just need to apply that. Introduction you need to give. That's a structure. It should be like this. Marxian thought on COVID. You can discuss the perspective, and then we'll also see the types of inequality here. What the new type of inequality which have emerged. I'll discuss that, and then how Marx's idea can be used to reduce inequality, and then we will conclude also. So what should be the answer? How will you give introduction and other things here? So just take a moment, think about it, and then we can get into the answer. See, guys, COVID-19, if you see, that actually exposed the inequalities in society, the existing inequalities in society, and created more inequalities also. And again, if you look at when I told you exposed inequality in terms of income, in terms of the technology gap, in terms of healthcare, in terms of gender, so you can see a lot of aspect of inequality which got exposed during that time, right? And if you see, there was an Oxfam report. It was highlighted that the wealth of the billionaires grew disproportionately during the crisis, and millions fell into poverty because of that crisis also, right? So see, the world is completely or deeply divided by class. We will now try to understand how Marx theories or the concepts will actually provide a critical framework to analyze the situation, and also how can we apply Marxian theory to address this inequality as actually discussed or asked in the question. So these are the areas that you can look at. So what is Marxian thought on COVID-19? You can talk about polarization of wealth. You can talk about digital divide it created, gender inequality you can discuss, healthcare inequality you can discuss. So when we talk about the polarization of wealth, what happened? The pandemic actually intensified the wealth disparity. The capitalize the capitalist actually use this opportunity or capitalize this opportunity during this crisis to increase the profits. The working class actually became jobless, and they lost the job and other things, and the salaries have reduced, and there were health vulnerabilities and the economic instability. All this affected the salaried class or the working class. And then digital divide, the shift to remote work actually highlighted unequal access to technology, right? The elite actually adjusted to the online systems and everything, but the poor struggled with limited digital resources. Now, gender inequality, women faced highest job losses. If you take the statistics, the employment rate for women actually rose from 15% to 18%, with potential GDP loss of around 218 billion. So again, that you can discuss. Not employment rate, I was talking about unemployment rate. I think by mistake I have mentioned employment rate. Okay, so unemployment rate actually increased, and that again contributed to GDP loss also. Healthcare inequality, that the poor, the marginalized, the women, the aged, often living in cramped and sanitary conditions, they again faced higher exposure to the virus, and you can see the people who dead at that point of time also related to that. So that's again exposed that healthcare inequality. So if you look at these issues, all we discussed align with the Marxian critique of capitalism, where the ruling class consolidate power, resources, money, and everything, and perpetuate that systemic inequality. So inequality have increased beyond doubt, that we can see at that point of time. Now, if you look at the types of inequality, as I briefly mentioned in the beginning, economic inequality is very evident, technological inequality, the divide, and the healthcare inequality, gender inequality, all you can mention. So wealth concentration among the billionaires actually widened the gap between the rich and poor because of COVID-19. And the digital divide, again, if you see, that left the marginalized group without access to essential services and education. Again, if you look at the limited healthcare infrastructure for the poor, that led to higher mortality rates among the poor, if you see. Again, women disproportionately face job losses and caregiving burdens, and further actually marginalized them in the economic recovery. So if you look at this, the marginalized sections affected more. If you look at the tribes, I'm not getting into that areas, not we can get into that also. So all these sections have affected very, since it's a paper one question only, I'm not focusing too much on caste, tribe, backward caste, etc. I'm talking paper one syllabus terms. I hope that idea is very clear for you. If this question would have asked in paper two, I would have added the tribes, I would have added the ethnic groups or the backward communities, the backward caste, the Dalits and everything, the age and everything we would have incorporated. So you need to understand, right? So now, how Marx ideas can be used to reduce inequality. Let's talk about this base economic infrastructure and superstructure framework. Marx argued that social change begins with understanding the, or restructuring the, or the first thing is that the core, right? That's the infrastructure. So we have discussed that systemic model of Marx, and there it is very clear. So by addressing the economic inequalities through wealth redistribution, social inequalities in education, healthcare, and gender can also be mitigated. So that's one thing. The economic infrastructure issues that need to be the base, the core issue need to be solved. For example, policies like progressive taxation, right, and the universal healthcare access and the equitable education that can reshape the superstructure of society automatically. Now, basic necessities, you need to keep it as a right. Ensure that the basic necessities as a right. So Marx envisioned a society where the state guarantees housing, healthcare, education, livelihood for all based on the requirement. So the implementation part is what actually required. We are talking about Marx perspective, Marxian understanding. So programs like universal basic income and strengthen public welfare schemes basically can reduce the vulnerabilities among the working class. Then alienation, you need to address alienation in the new work landscape. So Marx's concept of alienation has taken a new form at this point of time. You can explain that in detail, and the pandemic induced isolation and the lack of productive engagement have deepened the workers disconnect with the job section, right? What is the solution for this? Encourage the meaningful employment and the skill development programs, which can reduce dependence on exploitative this gig economies and improve mental well-being. Class struggles and advocacy for policy change, that's Marx's last solution actually. So Marx believed that the class struggle, right, that drive the societal change. In post-COVID world, if you see, organized labor movements and civil society may demand systemic changes to address the disparity. So that's what I mean by class struggle here. I'm not talking about the Marxian actual version of revolution and overthrow of capitalist and other things. So basically, labor movements and other things advocate for fair wages, better working condition, reduce the alienation, stronger labor rights, and corporate accountability. All these can ensure a more equitable recovery, right? So I hope the things are very clear. We applied the perspective, we understood the problem, we discussed the perspective, again, we provided the solution which has been asked in the question. So I think this is very clear. So what can you tell in the conclusion? See, the COVID-19 pandemic have starkly demonstrated the vulnerabilities of marginalized group, the downtrodden, the women, the aged, right, the lower class. The growth is essential, but it must be inclusive and equitable. That will prevent entrenched inequalities. So as we discussed, by applying Marxian principles such as addressing the economic infrastructure issues and then empowering the working class and ensuring access to basic necessities, the societies can strive for a fairer and more just and proper society during the post-pandemic period that we are witnessing at this point of time. So these are the things that we need to do, but balancing growth and redistribution, that again remain very critical. Achieving equality must not compromise overall economic stability. That's again very important. So what we need to do when we move forward, a synthesis of Marxian ideas and pragmatic policies that's actually essential to build resilient and equitable society. So, of course, we cannot implement Marxian ideas exactly like that. So we modified also when we discuss a solution. So I hope that is very clear for all of you. Thank you so much for attending. If you like the video, share it with your friends also. And in case if you're looking for our test series on sociology or the mentorship program for sociology or the course, check out the details in the description and get in touch with us. So guys, see you in the next session. Thank you so much.